In today's video, we're going to start talking about how you can implement Microsoft's robust security software called Defender for Endpoint in your business. Notice I said start talking because this is part one. Now, before we get into the content, just a quick intro. My name is Jonathan Edwards, also known as the Bearded 365 guy. Now, I help businesses all over the world with a Microsoft 365. You can find more information at bearded365guy.com. Now, this video is going to be the first in a series about how you can protect your devices in your business. Now, when we start talking about devices, of course, we're referring to things like Windows devices, Windows PCs, Windows laptops, but also Mac OS devices like MacBook Pros, but also smartphones like iPhones and Androids. Now, all of these devices in your business need protecting against cyber threats. Now, the software that we use to protect these devices is commonly known as endpoint security. Security for your endpoints. Now, when it comes to buying endpoint security software in your business, you've got a plethora of choices. Plethora, it's a new word I've learned and I quite like it. However, if your business uses Microsoft 365, you already have a really good endpoint security software solution at your fingertips. So it makes sense to use it. In fact, where I come from, we call that a no-brainer. Now, before I start demoing the product and how to deploy it and how to implement it, I think it's best to start talking about licensing because there are 3 different versions of this software. Thanks, Microsoft. Now, let me jump over to my screen and I will explain all about the licensing for Defender for Business. So let's talk about licensing, which I'm sure you'll agree when it comes to Microsoft, sometimes isn't very clear. So what I've got here is Microsoft Defender for Business. This is a product on its own. What does this product include? How much does it cost? Well, let's click on here, See Plan and Pricing, and that will scroll down here. So there's a standalone version of Defender for Business. The key thing that I want you to see here is this one here, up to 300 users, okay? So if you're a small business in Microsoft terminology and you've got fewer than 300 users, then you can buy Defender for Business. It costs £2.50 per user per month. Or if you subscribe to Microsoft 365 Business Premium, which all of our clients do, and I highly recommend that you do too, it is £18.10 and Defender for Business is included. You get lots more features in there, but Defender for Business is included. So the question I can hear you asking is, what happens if I've got more than 300 users? Well, then we're onto a different product. That is Defender for Endpoint. Now, Defender for Endpoint, just to make things a tad more confusing, comes in 2 plans. You've got Defender for Endpoint Plan 1 and Defender for Endpoint Plan 2. So all in all, we've got 3 products. We've got this one, and we've got Plan 1 and Plan 2 in this one. So what are the core differences? Well, if I open this page here, you can see Defender for Business includes all of these things. It's a really fantastic product. I'm going to cover a lot of these in today's video. If we then open this page here and compare them, we've got Defender for Endpoint Plan 1, which is the features included in here, and then Defender for Endpoint Plan 2 includes everything on here, okay? So I think it's a fair assessment to say that Defender for Endpoint Plan 1 is the entry-level plan for both of these. It includes fewer features. Defender for Business is a fantastic product, especially if you're running a small business, sub 300 users. And then Defender for Endpoint Plan 2 includes a lot more advanced features. But as I said, for small businesses, Defender for Business is the way to go, and it's what we're going to be concentrating on in this video. So I will go back to here. This is the Defender for Business page, and this gives you a nice little diagram. These are the 5 core features, and these are the features that we're going to be demoing and talking about for the rest of this video. Now let's move on to deployment. How do you deploy this product? Well, lots of different businesses have different IT setups. You might be running servers and domains, or you might be fully cloud-based. Whatever setup your business has, you can implement Defender for Business. However, in this video, I'm going to be concentrating on deploying Defender for Business via Intune. So I hope you've already got devices in Intune. Now, the first thing we need to do is set up the connection between Defender and Intune. Okay, so when then you add devices into Intune, they automatically onboard into Defender for Business. Let me show you how to do that. Okay, we're in the 365 Admin Center. Let's go down to Admin Centers and Security. Okay, we're going to go down to System at the bottom and then Settings. We're going to go to Endpoints. And we're going to go to General and Advanced Settings. Now, we've got lots of settings in here, and we'll cover some of those later in the video. But for now, I want one right down at the bottom here. Microsoft Intune connection. Connect to Microsoft Intune, okay? That needs to be switched on. You can see in my case it is. If yours isn't, switch it on and save it. We can then come out of there and go back to Admin Centers and Intune, Endpoint Manager, whatever you want to call it. And we go to Endpoint Manager. We scroll right down here to set up Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. Now you can see that my connection status is enabled and it's synchronizing. That's what you want it to be. There's a setting here though that you want to switch on. So if this is not playing ball, have a look down here. Connect Windows devices and above to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. Make sure that is switched on. Okay, once it is, click Save, and this is where you want to be, enabled connection status. Another setting that you want to do, so endpoint detection response here. This is, for me, this policy has created automatically. Okay, I've not had to create this. So if this is here, that's great. If it's not, create that policy. And to create the policy, you will go into here, you'd select the platform, select Windows, select the profile, click on Create. We'd give it a name, okay, click on Next. We've just got these three settings, okay? So what you want to choose is Auto from Connector, Sample Sharing, click on All. This is deprecated, so we don't need to worry about it. You will click on Next, click on Assignments, All Devices for this one, click on Next and Review. As I said, it will probably create automatically for you. That has done that for me. We can see Defender for Endpoint connection status. Everybody is happy. Okay, now we've set up the connection. Before we start implementing the product, there's a little bit of prep work that I'd like you to do, a little bit of homework. Firstly, I always recommend that you create Entra ID groups for these devices, rather than just throwing all of these settings at all devices. Secondly, we're going to touch on permissions. Who are the people who are going to be supporting your Defender for Business product, and how do you allocate the correct permissions for these people? And thirdly, you might want to set up email alerts so you know when there's a problem. Let's go over the prep work right now. Okay, so my first recommendation is to look at creating some Entra ID groups. You don't really want to just be throwing settings at all devices. Now, let me show you what I mean. So I'm back in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. If I go to Identity, and then under Identity Groups, we will open All Groups. So what I can do is I can create a new group. It's a security group, and I could name this group something like this: All Windows 11 Devices. Then if I go to membership type, I want this to be a dynamic device group because I don't want to manually have to add devices into this group. I want 365 to manage that on my behalf, all automatic. So to do that, what I need to do, firstly, I'll give it an owner as me, but I need to add a dynamic query. So I'll go into here, I'll choose the property, and this one is device OS version, starts with, and then I need the value for all Windows 11 PCs. So I'll copy that into there. It's 10.0.22. Okay. What I then do is validate it. So I'm just testing this group at the moment. So if I add a couple of devices, this will show me all the devices in my tenancy. Now, if I just open this here, you can see I've got a Windows 11 PC here called Fred PC. So I will choose that. I know this is a Windows 11 computer. This one here, look, iPhone 14. I don't think that's a Windows 11 computer. So to test this group, I will select these two here, and it validates. So it will say, yeah, Fred PC will be added to this group. This iPhone will not be added to the group. Okay, so I'll just go back here. So once I'm happy with that, I will click Save to create this group and create. That should create my group. Click on Refresh, and you can see that my group is now here, and it's a dynamic group. So all current Windows 11 devices, all future Windows 11 devices will automatically, dynamically be added to that group. Let's also briefly touch on permissions. So these are permissions that you're going to be assigning to the people who are going to be managing your security in your organization. So we're still within Entra. If I now go down to roles and admins, role and admins. Now, there are 3 permissions that you can assign. You can actually get really granular with this within the Defender portal. I'm not going to touch too much on that in today's video. But let's just talk about 3 main permissions. We've obviously got global admin. Now, a global admin has full unrestricted access to your Microsoft 365, which of course includes the Microsoft Defender products. Please avoid just giving everyone global admin access. The permissions are just too much. You need to really give people just the permissions that they need. There's also security, I'll type that in there, the security administrator. So a security administrator that can view the settings with Defender products, that can also change the security settings. Okay, it says here that is a privileged role. We've also got security reader, which is a level down. So a security reader, they can view information, okay, but they can't change any settings. Now, if you're going to be giving anyone in your organization a privileged role, make sure that you use multi-factor authentication, phish resistant if possible. Maybe check out my video on passkeys. So the final thing that I want to touch on in my prep work, so if I go back to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, we're now going to go into the security console. So we might want to configure some email alerts. So if you've got an IT department, you could configure the alerts to send the email to them, or maybe some kind of ticketing system or something like that. So in Microsoft Defender, if there's a couple of places we can add email alerts. If we go down to System and then Settings, and then go to Endpoints, we can see we've got an Email Alerts tab here. And we've got 2 tabs. We've got Alerts and we've got Vulnerabilities. So we need to configure alerts for both. The vulnerabilities refer to the vulnerability management, which is a feature of Defender for Business, and we'll be talking about that later in this video. But to add a notification rule, fairly self-explanatory. We can call this something like IT department notification. Click on Next. We might want to include all these. And then what alert severity do we want to alert to? Now, you've got to be quite careful here. If you choose all of these, you're going to get lots and lots of emails, and people might just kind of switch off from it and ignore them. So maybe something like this might be a good happy medium. We're going to click on Next. We obviously put the email address in here. We click on Add, click on Next, and you can see that that is easy to set up. There we have it. And we'd also do the same here. So click on Rule here, give that a name, click on Next. Again, be careful what you choose here. You might just want the critical ones. You might want to choose these, you might not. You don't want to get a flood of emails. Click on Next, type in the email address, click on Next. Oh, click on Add, click on Next, and you've created those notification rules. You might choose all the settings and you might get a load of emails, and then you might come back in here and dial it back a little bit, okay? It's up to you how you do that. Another place to configure some rules is if we go to Settings again, Microsoft Defender XDR, and we've got email notifications here. Now, Microsoft Defender XDR, we will be creating a video on this in future. Microsoft Defender XDR kind of is a product that spans multiple products. So we've got Defender for Business, we've got Defender for Office 365, we've got Defender for Cloud Apps. everything comes under the Microsoft Defender XDR, okay? So again, we can add notification rules. Again, just be careful because you don't want to get flooded with emails. So there you have it, a bit of prep work. We've created some groups, we've talked about security, and we've configured email alerts. What next? Okay, now we've done the prep work. Let's move on to the first component of Defender for Business, and that is Next-Gen Antivirus. Now, throughout this video, I'm going to use analogies to help with your learning. So here's the first one. Pretend your business has just bought a brand new office block and you want to protect that office block. So what you do is you employ a security guard and they stand at the front door and make sure that no one nasty gets into the building. Your computer is the office building and the Next-Gen Antivirus is the security guard. And that security guard is responsible to make sure that no nasty things get onto your computer. So what we need to do is create a Next-Gen Antivirus policy. And we do that right within Intune. Let me show you how. Okay, so we're in Intune in our test tenancy. If I go to Endpoint Security here, you can see now I've got some devices that are onboarded for Defender for Endpoint. I've got a couple that aren't. Don't worry too much about these because this is just a test tenancy. We've got a few devices that are switched off, etc. But you should start to see your devices getting onboarded with Defender for Endpoint. Now we need to start configuring some policies. So under Manage, we can see we've got a fair few bits to do. So if I go to Antivirus to start with, I'm going to create my AV policy. So I'll click on Create Policy. Platform is Windows. And the profile is going to be Microsoft Defender Antivirus. Okay, click on Create. And I give this a name. Once I've done that, I click on Next. And then I've got all these settings that I need to configure. Now, all of them at the moment are down as not configured. Now, that could mean one of a couple of things. Let's take this top one here. Allow archive scanning. So this scans things like zip files and CAB files. If I click on the drop down here, the default is allowed. So if I leave this as not configured, the default will kick in, okay? So I am going to force it to be allowed, but just so you're aware that sometimes if you leave it as not configured, people might think, oh, well, I've not configured it, so it won't scan the archives. In this case, it will because the default is set to allow. Then we're talking about a component of cloud protection, allow behavior monitoring. This monitors different applications and their processes and their behavior. So again, click on here. The default is allowed, so I will force that. Allow cloud protection. We absolutely need that. Again, the default is allowed, so that's okay. The email scanning, so this will scan emails, attachments in your Outlook and other mail clients, okay? Don't confuse this with Defender for Office 365. That's slightly different. Again, click on here. And as you can see here, this is slightly different because the default here is not allowed. So if you leave this as not configured, it won't scan emails. But I'm happy to switch that on. Allow full scan on map network drives. Again, the default is not allowed. I'm going to scan that. You might want to switch that off or not configure it. Allow full scan of removable drives such as USB flash drives. Absolutely do that. Again, the default is not to do that, but I'm going to allow that. That's deprecated, so we don't need to worry about that. Allow scanning of all downloaded files and attachments. I'm going to click on allowed. Real-time monitoring, allowed. Allow scanning network files. I'm going to put that on allowed. Script scanning, yes please. Okay, the next setting is allow user UI access. Again, if I go over to my test PC here, just type in security, you can see this is the UI here. So do you want to allow users to see this? Okay, it's up to you. I don't mind that, so we'll leave that as that. Okay, the next setting is the average CPU load factor. So this is how much percentage of the CPU will be allowed for a Defender scan. The default is 50%. So you might want to go into here and change this to something lower, maybe something like 20%. Archive max depth, you can see the description here. I'm okay leaving that as it is. Again, the same with this. I'm okay leaving that as it is as well. Okay, the next setting is check for signatures before running a scan. So this will check for new definitions. I think that's good to enable that, although the default is to disable it. Next is the cloud block level. So we've got a few options here. Choosing zero tolerance will block all unknown executables from running. It will be very secure, but it might cause some problems in your environment, okay? I would recommend that you go in with either high or high plus. I'm going to choose high for this. Next, we've got Cloud Extended Timeout. So this is how long Defender will block a suspicious file before it's allowed to run. And as you can see, we can allow up to 60 seconds. The default is 10 seconds. So if I go into here and put 50, it will also add the default. So we'll get 60 in total. Okay, just scroll down now. I'm going to leave some of these at the default settings. Enable network protection. I'm going to enable that into block mode. Here we can look at some exclusions, extensions, file paths, or processes. We can exclude if you wish. Just scroll up a little bit here. Potentially unwanted application protections, which I think is good to have. So we will put that on. Detected items are blocked. Scan parameter. The days of doing full scans, I think, with cloud protection are over, so we can choose here quick scan. Just having quick scans is absolutely fine. We can schedule some times, some scan days, some scan times if we want to. I will leave those as they are. I'll leave these as well, and we'll scroll down to here. This setting here, disable local admin merge. So what is this? We're going to set this to disabled. So what that means is that Intune wins out. If we set this to enable, it means a local admin on the device can actually bypass the protection that we've configured in Intune. So by setting this as disable, it means, as I said, Intune wins out. All the settings that we create in Intune kind of win out. Select this one as well. We've then got some threat severity default actions, okay? We've got a lot of actions in here. So what do we want to do? Remediate action for high severity threats. We can choose what we want. My recommendation is to leave these as not configured. When we leave these up to non-configured, we're basically leaving it up to the Microsoft security to decide what to do with these threats. If we start changing these, what we're basically saying is we know more than Microsoft security. So I'm happy to leave those as not configured. Okay, we're going to scroll down here to updates as we come to the end. Now we've got a few update channels to choose from, and we've got a few options. So Engine updates channel here, we've got some options. I would be tempted to leave it as the default, and that would be the device will stay up to date automatically. But you have got some options right down to this one here. So there's a time delay. So that means devices will be offered updates with a two-day delay. So if you've got a critical environment, you can enforce that onto there. Again, you can use groups. We've talked about Enter ID groups. You can have different AV policies for different devices. But my temptation would be to leave these as not configured and the default. Okay, so nothing to worry about there. Next, we're going to click on Next. We're going to click on Next. And then what we're going to do is assign it. So at this point, yes, you can assign it to all devices if you want. But what I'm going to do is choose my all Windows 11 devices. You can see that it picks up 8 devices. Click on Next. Click on Save. And my policy has saved. Oh, that was a bit of a mission, wasn't it? Okay, on to the next component. It's also a good idea to create a policy to manage Windows Firewall on all your devices. Again, you can do that right within Intune, and I'll also show you how to monitor it. Let's go. Okay, I'm back in Intune and Endpoint Security. I'm going to go down to Manage and Firewall, and I'm going to create a policy. The platform is going to be Windows, and the profile is Windows Firewall. Click on Create. We'll give it a name. Okay, click on Next. And we've just got a few sections. We've got Firewall, Auditing, Network List Manager. So starting with the firewall, the settings that I'm bothered about are these three here. So it's just enabling the firewall for domain, private, and public. Now in this world, if we leave it as not configured, the default is true, so it will be enabled. But I'm going to force this to select true because then some more options come up. Now you might also want to consider this option here, allow local policy merge. You might want to set that to false. So if you remember when we created the antivirus policy and we disabled the admin merge, that means that Intune is our source of truth. And if anyone on the local device tries to play with the AV, or in this case the firewall, they won't be able to. Everything has to be done via Intune. Now this is better for security, but you might want to tread carefully because it might cause some problems if you just switch this on and you've got some applications relying on certain firewall settings. So that is the recommended for security. Again, if I scroll down, I can switch this to true, on, that to false, this to true, this to false. Okay? Tread carefully with that. Auditing, yes please. Success and failure, success and failure. Click on next. Click on next. Assignments, again, you're getting used to this now. Click on next. Click on save. We've now got a Windows firewall policy. You might also, so where do you monitor this? Well, going back to our security portal again. Okay, down to here, reports, firewall. Okay, we've got no data in here, but along the top you can see inbound, outbound, and app. So you can see exactly what's going on across all your devices when it comes to Windows Firewall. Okay, on to the next component of Defender for Business, and that is called Attack Surface Reduction. What does that mean? Well, back onto our analogy about the office building. So we've got a nice new office building. We've got a security guard at the front desk doing quite a good job. But I didn't tell you, this office building, it doesn't have any doors and it doesn't have any windows. So each missing door or each missing window is a different attack surface. It's a different way in for the bad guys. There's also no fence around the office building, and the building is huge. So this poor security guard, he's got his work cut out. So first, let's install an electric fence around the building. This closes that attack surface. Then we're going to get new doors fitted. We're going to get new windows fitted. We're going to put locks on them all. We've then closed those attack surfaces. We can do the same in Defender for Business because, believe it or not, there's a lot of attack surfaces in your Windows computers. So what we need to do is create attack surface rules to close those gaps. But you've sometimes got to tread carefully because we might protect all your Windows devices, but it might stop something working. Do you want to know more? And do you want to know how to set these rules up? Of course you do. Let me show you. Okay, so we're in Intune. If I go to Endpoint Security and go to Attack Surface Reduction, I would go in here and create a policy. I'd target Windows and Attack Surface Reduction Rules. I will click on Create. I would name my policy, something like that. Click on Next. And here are all the Attack Surface Reduction rules. And at the moment, they're all set to Not Configured. And in this world, Not Configured means they're all switched off. Now, there might be a temptation for you to come in here and just block everything. Block, 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 block. Click on Next and create this policy. That might not end well for you because you might get lots of different issues. So how do we know what's going to cause a problem? Well, let's first look at the settings. So we've obviously got off, which is the default. Block is switched on. We've also got audit and we've got warn. Okay, so if we click on audit for all these, what will happen is no security will be applied, but all these will be audited. And then we can come back into our Defender portal here. We can go down to reports. We can go to attack surface reduction rules. We can change that to all, click on apply, and this shows no data, but it will show us the audited or the blocked, whichever we choose. This is our little reporting mechanism. So the idea is you would come into here, you would switch everything to audit mode, and you would audit your environment for a specified time. And after that, you will be able to see what is what, and you'll be able to amend your policy accordingly. There's another tip I can give you, and if we go back into the security portal here, we go to endpoints, we go to vulnerability management, and we go to recommendations. So this is what Defender is recommending to us. You can see here under related component, some of these apply to attack surface reduction. So Microsoft is giving us some advice on what we need to do to secure this tenancy. So what I can do here, I can filter this. I can go down to security controls, and I can choose attack surface reduction. So all I'm going to get now in this list is my attack surface reduction. So Microsoft is basically saying, switch all these on, okay? But Microsoft is giving us a little bit of a helping hand. So this top one here, block all Office applications from creating child processes. If I open this up here and I scroll down, you can see this here, look. So based on sensor telemetry analysis from the past 45 days, this configuration can safely be set on 5, that's 100% of your devices, with no expected user productivity impact. So Microsoft is basically saying, we've been watching this for 45 days and you can switch it on. There's no problem there. So this one is block all Office applications from creating child processes. But it has been running for 45 days. So again, there's an element there of setting it in audit mode for that time. That one is this one here. So I would be happy now to switch that to block. I can go back and see if we've got any more. So we've got this one here. Again, that one is all right. Creating executable content. Scroll down there. That one is there. So we can block that. So as you can see, there are different ways to do this. But I will just go through these. I will look at my recommendations and I will set the rest to audit. Let me just come back shortly. Okay, we've gone through our list here and we've created our policy. We've got some in audit mode and some in block mode. But I'm happy now to switch those on. Again, we can assign these to our group's Windows 11 devices. Click on OK, click on Save, and we've created our attack surface reduction policy. So what I can do over the next few days, few weeks, I can come into here and I can just check what's going on, and I will monitor it, and gradually, those that are in audit mode, I will switch to block, hopefully. So that is attack surface reduction rules. Now, the final thing I want to talk about in this video is called tamper protection. So we've created some really good security policies. We've got next-gen antivirus, we've got firewall, we've got attack surface rules. We're doing a good job. But what we don't want to do is someone to come along, get one of our Windows devices and change the security settings on that device. It would mean that device was no longer secure. This is where tamper protection comes in. It means that Intune basically manages the security on that device. Even if someone has local admin details to one device, they can't change the settings. Now, when it comes to tamper protection in Microsoft 365 and Intune, you can achieve it in two different ways. You can simply switch it on for the entire Microsoft 365, and that's okay for most businesses. But there might be times when you want some devices not to have that tamper protection, and you can do that too. Do you want me to show you how? Okay. So, tamper protection. So, I'm in the Defender portal now. If I just go down to System and Settings, go to Endpoints, on Advanced Features here, we just scroll down, you can see here, we've got tamper protection, and that is switched on. This will just simply switch on tamper protection for my tenancy. And for 99% of organizations, this is absolutely fine. If you've got an instance where you might have a few devices and you don't want this tamper protection to be on those devices, then you can achieve that within Intune. If we go to endpoint security, antivirus, create a policy, choose Windows, and this time we're going to choose Windows Security Experience. Click on Create. We can give this a name. Okay, click on Next. Now, lots of different settings here, but you can see the top one here, Tamper Protection Device. So at the moment, we can say, okay, we want to switch tamper protection off. And then what I could do, when I'm coming to assigning this, we could maybe have a group of computers where we don't want tamper protection to be enabled. So that is what I would do if I wanted to switch tamper protection off. But as I've said, this is fine for most businesses. Just make sure that is switched on. Now, another thing when it comes to tamper protection, what happens if you're working in IT support and something like that? You've got a user who calls up and says, I've got this application, it's not working well. I've spoken to the application company and they said it's due to my security software. So what you've got to do is maybe disable the security software or change the security software for a limited period of time while you investigate that issue. How can you achieve this with tamper protection on? Well, within the security portal, if we go to Assets and Devices, so my PC, what I'm talking about is called this one here, Fred PC. This gives us a kind of security overview of that device. Microsoft have built in a function called troubleshooting mode, okay? What this is, when we switch it on, it basically lets local admins change the configuration for 4 hours, okay? So it basically disables tamper protection for a period of 4 hours. And what this does, it enables you to then troubleshoot the problem. There we go. And after 4 hours, it will reset. So that basically is tamper protection. So that's it for part 1. If you followed all the advice in today's video, your devices are going to be much more secure. Now, Defender for Business is a meaty topic. So join me next week for part 2.